The following project intends to present the most important facts of Washington Irving's life, his tale Rip and Winkle, and how his writing masterpieces can be related to others of authors from different cultures.
Washington Irving. Author and editor Washington Irving was born in New York City in April 3, 1783. Irving achieved international fame for his fictional works, including the stories Rip and Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, as well as his biographies and historical writings. Irving served as the United States ambassador to Spain and helped to promote international copyright before his death in 1859. Washington Irving was educated privately, studied law, and began to write essays for periodicals. He traveled in France and Italy, wrote whimsical journals and letters. Then he returned to New York City to practice law. In 1815, Irving went to England to work for his brother's business, and when that failed, he composed a collection of stories of essays that became the sketchbook, published under the name Geoffrey Crayon, which include Rip and Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. He also lived in Germany, France, and Spain. Although he became a best-selling author, he never really fully developed a literary talent. He has retained his reputation as the first American man of letters. Irving also advocated for his writing as the legitimate career and argued for his stronger law to protect writers from copyright infringement. In 1999, director Tim Burton released his film Sleepy Hollow based on Washington Irving's story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Now, we want you to listen to a summary of Rip and Winkle. Rip and Winkle lived in a small village near the Catskill Mountains. He was a strange creature. He was energetic when his friends and neighbors needed help, but he neglected his own farm. As a result, everyone loved him except his wife, who constantly upbraided him for his laziness. Children especially loved him. They followed him around, climbed on his back, and played various tricks on him. Even the dogs seemed to like him. At least, they never barked at him. He had several children of his own, including a son called Rip. He also had a dog named Wolf, so Rip often went squirrel hunting with his dog to escape the vigorous invectives. One day, his hunting excursion took him up the slopes of the Catskill Mountains. After the sun had descended a considerable distance from its zenith, Rip decided that he ought to return home. However, he heard someone persistently calling his name. Looking around, he saw an old man climbing the mountain. He was wearing an older style of Dutch clothing and carrying a keg full of liquor. He helped the gentleman carry his load to its destination. As they went, Rip occasionally heard something that sounded like a peal of thunder. The two men eventually arrived at a huge amphitheater surrounded by perpendicular precipices. Within this amphitheater, some odd-looking men in quaint clothing were playing ninepins, which is a game similar to bowling. The sound of the rolling ball re-echoed, so that a noise similar to thunder was heard in the region round about. At a sign from the man whom he had never accompanied to the amphitheater, Rip served liquor to the players. He decided to take a sip himself, and one sip led to another until his senses were overpowered and he fell asleep. When he woke up, he was lying on the spot where he had first seen the old man carrying the keg. In place of his excellent gun, an old rusty one was lying beside him. His dog was also missing. He climbed back to the side of the amphitheater to look for his gun and his dog, but he found solid rock occupying the spot where the entrance to the amphitheater had been. Hunger eventually forced him to return to the village with his rusty gun and without his dog. As he approached and entered the village, he became more and more perplexed. He didn't recognize any of the people whom he met as he walked. He didn't recognize any of the dogs either, and they barked at him as he passed. He saw rows of houses which he had never seen before, and there were strange names over doors. The village was larger than it was before. When he felt his chin, he was surprised at the length of his beard. It had grown a foot long. When he finally found his own house, no one was there except a half-starved dog that looked something like Wolf. Rip was deeply hurt when the dog snarled at him. His house was in deplorable condition, and so were other buildings that he recognized. The village inn that he was accustomed to frequent was run down, and the great tree that used to lend its shade to the inn was gone. In its place was a pole with a strange flag on it. The flag was decorated with a number of stars and stripes. Rip's unusual appearance attracted the attention of people who had been engaged in a strange conversation about elections and other phenomena. Rip was perplexed when someone asked him whether he was a Federal or a Democrat. He meekly answered that he was a quiet man, a native of the village, and a loyal subject of the king. For some reason, this made people angry. They called him a spy and a Tory. A man who seemed to be important quieted the crowd. He asked Rip why he had come to the village. In reply, Rip humbly said that he was looking for his neighbors. The prominent citizen asked for their names. Rip mentioned Nicholas Vedder and learned that he had died long ago. He mentioned Brown Dutcher, but he had died in the war. He mentioned Van Bommel, the schoolmaster, but he had distinguished himself as a general in the war and was now in the Congress. Finally, he exclaimed in despair, "Does nobody here know Rip and Winkle?" Several people pointed to a gentleman leaning against a tree. When Rip saw that man leaning against the tree, he discovered that the man looked exactly like himself, at least as he used to be. Rip didn't realize that he was looking at his grown-up son, and he became incoherent. The people of the village concluded that he was insane. They were planning to take his rusty gun away from him, fearing that he might act erratically and hurt somebody with it. At this point in time, Rip heard a woman calling her frightened child Rip, and assuming him that the old man would not hurt him. Rip asked her who she was. She told him that she was Judith Gardiner, the daughter of Rip and Winkle, who had disappeared 20 years ago. She also told him that her mother had died recently. Rip told Judith that he was her father. One old woman in the crowd then recognized him and asked him where he had been all these years. In reply, Rip told them what had happened. Most of the people didn't believe him until they consulted Peter van der Donk, the oldest man in the village. Peter told them that Henry Hudson, who had discovered the Hudson River and the surrounding countryside, occasionally frequented the Catskill Mountains with the crew of his ship, the Half Moon. Peter's father had once seen them playing ninepins in a hollow of the mountain. After this, the crowd lost interest in Rip and concerned themselves in the election once more. Rip had slept throughout the Revolutionary War, and it was a long time before he understood the resultant political changes. He was not interested in politics. Rip's daughter took him home to live with her. Eventually, Rip found a few of his old acquaintances, and he became popular with the rising generation. In view of his age, no one blamed him for avoiding profitable labor, and he lived happily ever after.
Relating Irving's writings to other literature, we have known for a long time how dreams can take a person to incredible places where that person has never been and will never be. Washington Irving used the dream in the Rip and Winkle story. He used the dream to make real travel in time, to know people for another era. We'll present two examples on how dreams and the passing of time are involved in the literature. Example number 1 is Sleeping Beauty, which has two remarkable versions, one in the French literature by Charles Perrault and one in the German literature by the Brothers Grimm. In this tale, a beautiful princess was cursed to sleep 100 years. In that tale, 100 years pass, and a prince from another family spies the hidden castle during a hunting expedition. His attendants tell him different stories regarding the happenings in the castle until an old man recounts his father's words. Within the castle lies a beautiful princess who is doomed to sleep for 100 years, whereupon a king's son is to come and awaken her. The prince then breaks the tall trees, brambles, and thorns which part of his approach, and enters to the castle. He passes the sleeping castle folk and comes across the chamber where the princess lies asleep on the bed. Trembling at the radiant beauty before him, he fell on his knees before her. The enchantment comes to an end.
The second example is taken from a book called Mitología Cuscatleca, written by the Salvadoran author Efraín Melara Méndez. There is a tale in that book which is called El Rayo Ionosfero. That tale shows how people think things can change as time goes by. El Rayo Ionosfero was written in the 50s, and it portrays the year 2001, full of very intelligent scientists, but also full of beings from Pluto. These Plutonians wanted to prevent men from loving women so that they could possess them and build a new kind of society. Fortunately, the intelligent scientists invented a weapon which destroyed the Plutonians and everything turned to be normal again. All the examples previously presented show supernatural aspects. The one in Rip Van Winkle is a man sleeping for 20 years. In Sleeping Beauty, a princess sleeping for 100 years. And in El Rayo Ionosfero, it is how the passing of time can modify societies to even include people from outer space. Rip Van Winkle is so famous that it has even been included in cartoons so that children can understand the story better. As a way to conclude our project, we want to show you a cartoon that is Mr. Magoo telling the story of Rip Van Winkle. Thanks for listening to this and enjoy your cartoon.